We need to understand how the mind works. We need to know what the heart needs. And we have to be able to craft words that your audience will never forget. The reality is this: you cannot take an audience from where they are now to where you want them to be, to where they never expected to be on a whim. You must draw them into a carefully structured pathway, clear and coherent and easy to follow, yet still powerful and emotionally compelling. This is not luck. This is neuroscience in action. Welcome back to the Speaker Driven Business Podcast, episode number 90. And today's topic is really a result of what I'm seeing. We're going through this rise again of people actually coming in and being told what they should speak on. Now, I have ranted about this for years and years and years, and it's this expectancy within our market that there is only one way to make money. There is only a certain amount of topics you can speak on. And yes, there are certain things that will be in demand, but let me tell you now, most of those are seasonal. There are definitely the stayers, but a lot of the topics and the trending and the things are seasonal. True longevity and sustainability in this business actually comes from speaking on something that really matters to you. And so today I want to walk you through how to actually, number one, identify it, and number two, then create it. Because all of speaking is really about moving an audience from where they are now to where you want them to be, to where they never expected to be. And to do that takes that age-old thing of connecting at a heart level, right? Meaningful, authentic connection, dropping people from their head to their heart. And we hear this rhetoric all the time, but what does that actually mean? And even if we know what it means, how do we actually deliberately create and curate that? Well, it shows up in the starting point, I guess, where we show up with this is in when people first bump into my world. And to start today's conversation off and go into a bit more depth, I want to actually take you back. I'm going to take you into something specific that happened with one of my clients. And that is somebody that we've been working with for a while, but we started our work by doing a private strategic positioning session together. So that's one of the things we do with a lot of our clients to work out exactly where they should be playing in the market, how their experience actually feeds that, and how to show up in that market. So it's really around that strategic positioning piece, even before we get to creating their speech and their spoken word content. This particular client we were working with, she was in Canberra, and I had flown in there to do the conversational part, the brainstorming part of this, actually in person. And it was literally just before midday on a Friday. We're sitting in a boardroom in Canberra, and we were about 90 minutes in. We'd been brainstorming for that entire period, and I'm going to be really honest, we were a little bit stalled. And not because the woman across from me was not impressive. She has an extraordinary global career. She works in foreign aid. She goes into war zones in newly ceded countries to help them establish treasury and financial governance for governments. It's pretty mind-blowing what she actually does. She's been working with the IMF, with the World Bank, with Deloitte. She's actually just about to do an incredible TikTok contract for one of the most, what I would have thought was the most conservative agencies in the world. She's incredible. And she's actually getting ready for next. So she's currently on an international posting, an international contract, but she's getting ready for next. And at this particular session, we were talking about taking all of that experience and turning that into a professional speaking career. Now, she had been told that she should be talking about leadership. She's done that everywhere. She actually believes that she wants to speak about being able to do anything you set to mind to, because she's actually a small-town girl from Backtown, Australia. And to be very frank, what she's telling me in this session is that she would love to speak to women to encourage them to speak into positions of leadership. And they're all really valid choices, and a lot of them are completely logical when you consider her career, her experience, her beliefs, her philosophies, and her viewpoint. But nothing she is saying has what I'm listening for. So I actually asked her to start telling me the stories of her life. And as she slows towards the end of each one, I ask her, why does that story matter to you? And we are actually another hour in, And I'm starting to worry that it's actually not going to reveal itself. And what I'm looking for is the moment that I'm always listening for, even when I don't think I am. It's the moment that without realizing it, the person I'm talking to breathes slower. They breathe more deeply. The pace of their words slow, and their voice drops to a tone of absolute certainty and conviction. Now, sometimes it's a split second, and sometimes it's a few minutes. But it is very rarely, if ever, when the person in front of me is speaking about what they have been told they should speak about. And for this woman, this day, it is not leadership. It is not small town girl making it big, and it is not about women in leadership. It shows itself in the moment I ask her why one particular story matters to her, and without any noticeable cue, she slows. She imperceptibly relaxes. Her voice deepens, and she shares straight from her heart the power of the work that she has done and why it actually matters. Unguarded and rich and grounded, in less than 3 minutes, the atmosphere has completely shifted. And as I reflect it back to her, she does what most people do. She stops for a moment, she holds her breath, and then she lets it out in relief with tears welling. Because what we've just uncovered is what actually matters to her and not what should. In this industry, we constantly hear that there is no one way to success, that there are as many topics and pathways as there are people and humans wanting to speak. And yet, when we decide to double down and make this our future, that messaging suddenly becomes incredibly narrow. It rapidly becomes you need to speak on this, for that, or you're never going to make money. Completely missing the irony that this focus is the polar opposite to the messaging of there is no one way. Last year, here in Australia, Peter Merritt took out Keynote Speaker of the Year, a brand and a topic that he was originally told would never work. A brand and a topic and a way of being that feels to break all of the rules, and yet it does work. The year before that, here in Australia in 2023, we celebrated Julie Cross as Keynote Speaker of the Year. Now, for those of you not familiar with Julie, she is a woman who wore sequins at the airport at 5 a.m. before sequins were even cool, who technically speaks too fast and moves too fast, and who got her speaking career moving, creating her own shows in town halls in regional cities. Two completely different people. Two people who appear to have thrown the shoulds out the window. Two people who we love and celebrate because of that. Julie, Peter, and this woman in Canberra. What is it that three completely different people have in common that makes this thing work? It's resonance. It's the ability to connect deeply on a visceral level. And it shows up in what I'm listening for every time I start to work with someone. And it's what I've come to know as the resonance drop. It's that moment when we shed the shoulds, when the person in front of me stops performing and starts speaking from a place of really deep conviction. It's the difference between, I believe everyone has a story worth telling, and every single in this room has deep experience, deep expertise, or a unique perspective forged through the experiences and found in the stories of their life. And for some of you are literally sitting on the story that will change your entire future. It's literally a drop. We breathe more slowly, we breathe more deeply, and the pace of our words slow. Our voice drops to a tone of absolute certainty and conviction. We move from our heads to our hearts. And this means that we are now capable of doing the same for our audience. But let's back up for a moment. What is actually really happening when we drop into resonance? Well, the first thing is that our parasympathetic nervous system, the body's calming system, activates because we are somewhere familiar. Then this slows our breathing. Our breathing slows, not quickens, because we are speaking from certainty and not from performance. This then relaxes the vagus nerve, which controls our voice and our tone, and it makes our voice deeper, steadier, and more relaxing to the audience. And with that shift, the audience's mirror neurons fire in response, allowing them to feel what we feel, instantly trusting this visceral, experiential shift. Identifying where the resonance drop happens naturally is essential for success. It means that I know that you've got what it takes, but it's also just the beginning. For the sake of your future sustainability, what you need to understand is how to take that single, undeniable drop of resonance and turn it into something far more powerful. Because here's what I want you to know. When you can deliberately engineer moments of resonance, you can have them stack, multiply, and deepen, meaning your message stays in the minds, the hearts, and the conversations long after you've finished speaking and you left the room. This means you become unforgettable. And it all starts with unlocking something that we've come to call the resonance code. The resonance code is a combination of the mind, heart, and words. We need to understand how the mind works. We need to know what the heart needs, and we have to be able to craft words that your audience will never forget. And when all three of these come together, we create moments of resonance. Most people I meet naturally exist almost entirely in one element. Logic for the brain, story for the heart, or words that they love, but actually miss the mark. Some have a little more horsepower and they'll cross over two of the three. But what happens when you only have two of the three? Well, if you have the mind and heart together, if you understand what the mind needs and the heart wants, but you don't pay close attention to your words, you will end up with what we call the ghost speech. You're going to be incredibly inspirational, but ultimately forgettable. And if you bring the heart and the words together, but pay no attention to what the mind needs, you end up with what I call the maze effect. Emotionally, incredibly moving, but no clear pathway or message to take away. And if you bring the smarts for the mind and your words together, but fail to engage the heart through story, you will deliver what we call the empty gift. Intellectually precise, technically correct, but emotionally flat. We need all three, the mind, the heart, and the words, to be able to command the power of resonance. Think about a talk you still remember vividly. You will recall exactly where you were sitting, how the speaker made you feel, and even the words that they used. That speech had resonance. The structure gave you clarity. The emotion made you care, and language, the words used, made it impossible to forget. So then let's start with the mind. In 2024, I experienced a really powerful speech delivered by Jan Senai at the National Speakers Association Influence Conference in the US. Now, what captured my attention wasn't just the storytelling and powerful call that he held to remain distinctly human in an age of rising AI. It was something surprising he revealed. And that was this, that our future communication, our ability to remain compelling in an AI-driven world, will actually hinge on deeply understanding how the human brain, how our mind actually works. It's not enough to tell stories. We must know precisely how our words land neurologically and how our audience's brains process, retain, and respond to messaging. Now, today, I don't have time to deep dive neuroscience with you, and I'm not a neuroscientist, so I'm going to give you your starting point. The brain needs structure. Yes, even your mind needs structure. Structure is not about restricting your creativity. Structure is a strategic, deliberate move designed specifically to leverage the mind's preference for clarity, predictability, and coherence. We use 7 key structures based on a loop in every format of speaking that we use, that we teach our clients. And why is this? Is because the reality is this. You cannot take an audience from where they are now to where you want them to be, to where they never expected to be on a whim. You must draw them into a carefully structured pathway, clear and coherent and easy to follow, yet still powerful and emotionally compelling. Consider TED Talks for a moment. These are the most viral speaking format of our generation, Gen X. Its power is because the TED Talk follows a very clear and consistent structure, a clear beginning, a deliberate middle, and a really compelling close. TED uses the brain's natural wiring to their advantage, creating a path that's simple and insanely memorable. This is not luck. This is neuroscience in action. And when you structure your talks deliberately, you harness the most powerful tool at your disposal, the human mind's natural desire for clarity and coherence. Once you understand how to structure your message for the mind, then your next crucial move is to drop from the mind to the heart. And the only way you can do this is through storytelling. Neuroscience, again, reveals that stories aren't simply entertainment. They engage the brain's emotional and sensory regions. This is when your audience listens to a well-crafted story, means that they're not just hearing your words, they're actually experiencing them. But just telling your story isn't enough. When John Cena delivered the keynote I mentioned earlier, he demonstrated this brilliantly. He didn't rely solely on personal anecdotes or in technical data. Instead, he seamlessly moved between personal stories, global insights, quick anecdotes, witnessed experiences, and vivid metaphors. And this combination was not random, it was strategic. Because the most powerful speeches are multidimensional. They blend personal stories, which bring deep connection and trust building, global stories to create context and scale. They bring in anecdotes and witness experience for credibility and relatability, and they bring in strong metaphors, which offer real novelty to the brain and instant emotional engagement. All of these story types must be present for your audience to feel into your talk, to believe in what you say, and to deepen their trust in you. And trust always originates in story and always engages through the heart. Now, in this audience, we all know that storytelling is really important, don't we? Google, is storytelling important in public or professional speaking? And you will get more than 1.3 billion hits in less than 3 seconds. We know storytelling is important. So why then, quite frankly, are there still so many shitty storytellers in the world? It's because we don't realize there is storytelling, and then there is the intentional use of language, the words we use to tell the story. In 2020, at the height of the pandemic, I was asked to deliver to platform professionals here in Australia. This is the level of our professional speaking body, which is CSP and above. I had just been awarded my CSP, Certified Speaking Professional, the weekend that we plunged into lockdown in Australia. And so as I loaded my presentation on Zoom behind closed borders and lockdown doors, I literally closed my eyes, whispered a quick prayer, and I don't think I fully exhaled until I'd finished. Talk about strangling any potential points of resonance. But when fleshing out this thought that I had around resonance and the resonance code, I remember that I actually still had the chat transcript from that presentation. And I kind of thought, well, if anyone and any audience response will hold the keys to what I'm thinking about here, it will be that one. And as I poured over the comments, I was reminded of just how strongly that talk landed that day. It had resonance all the way through it. And not because of the big stories that I have, or simply because of a proven structure, which I definitely used, but because of my deliberate use of words to evoke emotions, create vivid mental imagery, and paint sensory experiences through my words. One particular moment was recalling the devastating loss of my 2IC by suicide in my early 30s when I was running a multi-7-figure business. When I first started telling the story from the platform, I would literally land the line, I lost my 2IC to death by suicide and I was blamed for her death. But after learning more, that part of the story became this. Alicia and I were joined at the hip. We were so in sync. Our husbands joked that we should never have the same hairstyle just in case they took the wrong wife home. She was my mirror, my business wingwoman, and everything we touched turned to gold. But the day I walked into my house, climbed the stairs, and saw my mother standing quietly on one corner of the deck, I knew immediately. Without a single word spoken, I knew Alicia was gone. And in that instant, I felt like I was staring into a mirror that felt like it was shattering on repeat. The glass shards crushing beneath my bare feet every morning as I rose to walk across the floor to face yet another relentless day without her. Now, the first version of that story is an absolute interrupt, but also a very small group of any audience could ever relate to my experience. The circle of entrepreneurs who had lost their 2IC to death by suicide, been blamed for her death, and had to keep running a multi-7-figure business, that circle, that audience, is actually relatively small. But the second, taking you into a moment when you knew you didn't want to hear the thing about to be said, and the heartbreak that followed, both of those are psychologically universal. And how do you know when you've made your story universal? Well, it's a difference in the chat in this instance. For the first, the brief direct statement, the comments were always, "You are amazing. You are so brave. Your story is incredible. You need to tell this all the time. Everyone needs to hear your story." But the second, the universal story, every single comment was what they felt, what they were reminded of, where they found themselves within my story. Not a single comment was about me, my story, how brave I am, or how big my story. And this is the difference. When you hit that moment of resonance, you evoke the emotions and sensations of a universal story that your audience can put themselves inside of. You fade into the background. Stories alone won't unlock hearts. Language alone, the words we use, will not create lasting connection. But when your language comes into stories to paint powerful pictures and vivid sensations, you can open every heart in front of you. Your words matter deeply. These are the keys to emotional safety, to profound resonance, and genuine human connection. They are the most powerful part of what I know to be true. That the brain needs structure so your audience can follow. The heart needs emotion and story so your audience can feel. And resonance demands words of precision so your audience will never forget what you said. Because in this era of rising AI, it's not changing how we speak, it's changing what we're listening for. And the greatest human advantage we all have is cracking the resonance code. Because when we drop into resonance, we move beyond speaking. We shape minds, we move hearts, and we make impact that outlasts the applause. So as I bring this week's conversation to a close, my only question left for you is, are you actually ready to go there? Are you ready to unlock it? Are you ready to bring the full power of resonance to everything that you do? Because if you are, then maybe it's time that we had a chat.